Livelihoods, we're back on track, and now we would like to report on a project related to Regreening Africa and the Great Green Wall. That Great Green Wall is an African-led movement with the epic ambition to install an 8,000-kilometer natural wonder of the world across the entire width of Africa. A decade in and roughly 15% underway, the initiative is already bringing life back to Africa's degraded landscape at an unprecedented scale, providing food security, jobs and a reason to stay for the millions who live across its path. Once completed, the Great Green Wall will be the largest living structure on the planet, 3 times the size of the Great Barrier Reef. In this session here, we want to share Regreening Africa's unique partnership approach and integration of research, practice and policy to support land restoration. We also want to reflect on how the scientific evidence and the lessons learned can be interconnected and applied to future restoration projects. The session is organized by World Agroforestry, the excellent center of science and development that wants to harness the benefits of trees for people and the environment. And the session will be chaired by Patrick Worms, who is Senior Policy Advisor at World Agroforestry, and in that capacity handles all policy and donor outreach in Europe. So I propose, Patrick, that you take it away.
Philip, thank you very much for such a wonderful introduction. Oh, it's extremely confusing when you hear yourself in your ear with half a second delay. So, I have a very strong voice. Those of you who don't have your things, put them on now. The Great Green Wall is going to become a wonder of the world. And it is going to become a wonder of the world because for the last 15 years, it has been the object of one of the most breathtaking research and development experiences that have ever happened. We have tried blocks of trees, agroforestry, pastoral management, dealing with livelihoods, doing conservation, rebuilding nature reserves, and we understand now that it is the mixture of all of these things in a breathtaking mosaic that is not only going to help the Great Green Wall prevent the Sahara from moving south, but is also going to completely change the livelihoods of the people over there. What we're going to do in this session is begin to review some of that evidence, and I'll be joined to do that by 3 absolutely fantastic speakers. Ladies first, Birgin Lamizana. Birgui is the coordinator of the Accelerator of the Great Green Wall at the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification from Bonn. Birgui, welcome. Choose your chair. And then Mieke Born. Mieke Born is a social scientist who is also the project manager of what is probably the largest regreening effort currently happening in the Great Green Wall countries, Regreening Africa. And she will be sharing some of her experience on how to make that work across vastly different landscapes, vastly different cultures, and with vastly different partners. And last but not least, Father Christmas himself. Bernard Khabib, the task manager at the European Commission, who is funding Regreening Africa and with whom we have over the years developed a fantastic relationship. And you can see the amazing applause coming from his colleague Philippe Maillot over there. Why? Because we're not just regreening Africa for livelihoods, but we are regreening Africa for biodiversity. And if anything gets this guy out of bed in the morning, it is biodiversity. With that, I'm going to ask you to put the Slido questions up there because we want you to use modern technology. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you can use your computers and your telephones to your heart's content. And we have 3 questions for you. First, which sector do you represent? Public sector, private sector, civil society, academia? These questions will stay up even while we start with our presentations. So can I have the second question, please? Technical staff, can I have the second question, please? Okay, maybe not. There we go. Lots of civil society people. Nobody from the private sector, nobody from academia. We'll keep that going on. So while this is happening, these questions will be passing on. I'm going to pass the floor to Mieke, who is going to tell us exactly how you restore an enormous number of hectares at a remarkably low price. Mieke, take it away.
I'm going to stand up. Thank you so much, Patrick. And just as the slides come up, can we go over to the first presentation? My name is Mika Born Ochieng. I work at C4ICRAF, World Agroforestry, and a research center focusing on forestry and on agroforestry, based in Nairobi in Kenya. So let's see if the slides... Okay. So I'd like to share a story today about a program called Regreening Africa. But just to set the scene, land degradation is one of the critical threatening areas in our landscapes. Over 3 billion people globally are affected by land degradation, and within the African context, that's 65% of our agricultural land is degraded. Land is really the foundation of food security, of livelihoods, of if we want to combat desertification, if we want to improve biodiversity, climate change mitigation and adaptation to achieve the SDGs, land is really the foundation of all this work. And this is why we have this program called Regreening Africa. It's funded by the European Union. It's a 5-year-long program, and we're coming towards the end. It's a very ambitious program that aims to restore 1 million hectares of land in these 8 countries and to benefit over 500,000 people. The program focuses primarily around integrating trees into pastoral, crop, and where appropriate, communal lands, along with complementary soil and water practices and sustainable agriculture. Regreening Africa is a slightly different type of program, however, because in Regreening Africa it's a research in development. The program, or the consortia, is led by World Agroforestry, which is a research center. We offer design, monitoring, and research support. Implementation is led by a range of some of the world's largest NGOs in all of these countries: Oxfam, CRS, CARE, World Vision, Sahel Eco. We're linked to the governments through national coordination committees, and in this way we have a really innovative partnership that links the community, the governments, science and development. And we've achieved a lot in these 4 years so far. And as we come to the end of the 5th year, by the end of year 4, we'd already reached out to over 400,000 households and over 600,000 hectares. Initially, this program aimed to restore land at 20 euros a hectare. We don't have the final number yet as we're conducting our impact evaluation, but we suspect it will be around 30 to 40 euros a hectare to at least start this restoration process, and then with more added on for some of the livelihood benefits. We've had a few lessons come out of this program that we think are really critical to take forward into these large restoration initiatives, such as the Great Green Wall, and we wanted to share some of them with you today. So the first lesson is around practices. There is no single silver bullet. There is no one practice that will work everywhere. It will be a combination, and they must be matched to local contexts. That's the biophysical, the environmental context, as well as the socio-economic and the needs and the desires of the people that live on the land. For example, this is from Niger. This is soil and water conservation, and a critical first step if we're looking at integrating trees and improving yields. Farmer-managed natural regeneration. This is an example from Ghana. Farmer-managed natural regeneration is a low-cost way to bring trees back into the landscape because it depends on the rootstock and the wild seedlings, often indigenous or local tree species, and allows them to naturally regenerate, and then they are managed. In this way, they have much higher survival in areas where there's low rainfall, and also ensures a greater biodiversity in the landscape. In Ethiopia, exclosures have been extremely successful. This is a social fencing, often, where there's an agreement to leave pieces of land to naturally regenerate, and so that the land can restore, and then certain resources are accessed by the community. And this method is now being practiced in a number of other countries. We talk a lot about tree planting, and I think a lot of the discussion around restoration is on tree planting campaigns and whether or not we should be planting trees. I think the question should be more about where can we grow trees so that they survive, where does it suit, and what type of trees and who is going to benefit. So we're moving beyond tree planting to also tree growing, and making sure that we're looking at other aspects like grafting. You can graft within a field so that you have higher quality trees growing, but using the existing root stock. And with these tree growing campaigns, Nurseries are incredibly important. The quality of the trees that grow will depend on the quality of the nurseries to reduce pests, to make sure that the trees are as productive as possible, and also to ensure that we have a range of species, including indigenous. So the second lesson that really has come out is that we must address both the drivers of degradation as well as the incentives for restoration. These can be very variable. So the drivers of degradation in some places as unmanaged cattle or grazing. In some places it may be fire, it may be around charcoal production. But if we don't address these drivers, then the degradation process will continue even as we try to restore the land. And one of the most critical elements is incentives. If there is no incentive for someone to restore their land, they will not invest the time and energy to do so, and therefore these are the people that we really must be thinking about when we're designing these sorts of programs. Incentives can come in many forms. One of the key ones that we've seen in Regreening Africa is user rights. If a community is not able to use what they restore, they will not be motivated. In many of the West African countries we work in, the trees that are restored on people's land are not automatically owned by them, or the products are not automatically at their right to use. And this is one of the big challenges and the bottlenecks. Another key incentive, of course, is around livelihoods and value chains. This is a really critical part of the restoration story, and linking these value chains to the work that's taking place, to the trees and to the restoration process. The third lesson is around measurement, and this is really coming back to the science and the research part of this theme. Measurement is critical, and integration of science and research in the programs is very important. In Regreening Africa, we have a number of different measurement techniques. We have household surveys, we're conducting impact evaluations, we're looking at socio-economic elements, but we're also looking at land health. We're combining the land degradation surveillance framework, which is looking at collecting information from the ground, sampling soil, looking at different indicators, combining that with earth observation to create some of the most sophisticated and accurate maps around land health dynamics. In this way, we can actually track the changes in biophysical status as the restoration progresses. It's also critical that citizen science becomes part of this process, making tools available to the community and to the local extension officers so that they can also be capturing what is taking place on the ground. We developed a tool called the Regreening Africa app, which is actually being showcased at the Smithsonian Design Museum at the moment. And this app is available on the Google Play Store, where you can download and use it in any project. Through this app, we collect polygons, or the edges of the farmer field, as well as information on what's happening, so that over time we can track and see the changes in that land and the type of restoration that's taking place. We hope in the future this will also be able to provide advisory services back to the community. So we have a lot of data. We've got a lot of progress, but one of the things that we really learned is that the data is not as valuable if we can't integrate it into the learning process. If it is not rapidly integrated into the planning for adaptation, then it is not as useful as it could be. We used a structured stakeholder engagement process to make sure that the data that was collected was well integrated. This was particularly through joint reflective learning missions, which took place once a year, bringing the scientific data, the perspectives of the community, of the government and of the NGOs, and having reflective learning to see what was working, where we needed to improve, and how we needed to adapt the following year to improve the programming and the implementation. And this has yielded very, very impressive results within the program. And my very last lesson is around partnerships. Particularly looking towards the Great Green Wall and these giant ambitions, it really does take partnerships of all types. Government, civil society, the community, researchers, all of us must work together and really, really focus as well on the inclusion of youth and women. So just to wrap up, I'm very much looking forward to taking these lessons and this experience from Regreening Africa into the Great Green Wall, and I look forward to passing over to my friend Birgit to add more on that. If you'd like more information on Regreening Africa, that we have a website, lots of social media, there's lots of resources available. Thank you.
Mika, thank you very much for this brilliant exposition of why research in development is so important. Research is not cheap, but as you can see from those results, without research, the amount of money you're likely to waste is enormous. With research, you achieve results that are unparalleled, at least in the accuracy of what you're able to measure, and thus the adaptations that you can do. And I suspect, Birgit, that this is the kind of approach that the Accelerator is trying to encourage across the Great Green Wall countries, isn't it? The idea that we use data, that we use methodologies, that we all agree on how to measure things in order to rapidly scale up the things that we think are likely to work. Birgit Lamizana, to remind you, is with the Accelerator of the Great Green Wall. Over to you.
It's working. Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for being here. If I can have my presentation up. Next. Yeah, so I think that the presentation Mika did is really an example of the nature-based solution on how to solve some problems, which you look at a kind of a huge way, looking at the Great Green Wall from the western part of Africa till the eastern part. So I'm going to just talk about the lesson learned, why the Great Green Wall Accelerator. In 2020, meaning that almost some decades after the start of the Great Green Wall inceptions, organization took stake and say, let's see where we are in terms of program, in terms of progress. And it hasn't been easier to come up with saying what has been done during these different decades. So the impact report, assessment report, which came out in 2020, was based on kind of desk study, and the main challenges and which comes out was lack of governance, many stakeholders, many intervene, claiming that they're working on Great Green Wall, but sometimes not really linked to that. The issue of monitoring and reporting came out. You will see in some of the reports talking about 4%, 15%, but the challenge was there was no baseline. There was no indicators to really measure. And when you want to measure a progress, you have to measure against something on where were you on the start. So this was a huge gap. When you are reading the report, you find out. I lost my presentation, but I can continue. So the other challenge was, despite the monitoring and reporting aspect, to say where we are after more than a decade, was the funding. Most of the partners, particularly the government entities, was really lacking funding. The funding will come down to, for example, some civil society, some private sector, or some other entities without the national agencies of the Great Green Wall being aware. And the technical part was also an aspect, because as the program, like the Regreening Africa and others, because there had been many, the lesson was not kind of captured and shared, and sometimes many techniques has been used in some areas, but not replicable, not duplicable, not expanded. So this was the challenges which has been identified during this report. And based on that, you will see the achievement which has been laid out in terms of country by country, from Senegal to Djibouti and Eritrea. But sometimes you look at them, you can have this online, it's really available. But you will see that the countries are not at the same level. As I said, the challenges was there to see what is the baseline. What are you being capitalized here? Is it really within the areas that they call the Great Green Wall areas, or is it outside? Is it the whole country, like the case of Ethiopia, for example, which, if you look at the report, and they're talking about 4% to 50%, most of the 50% is based on the effort from Ethiopia. So that's what, which led to the One Planet Summit, because after the report was released in September, the head of states, and that's the beauty of the Great Green Wall, is because it's really with a high political level, with the head of states, ministerial council, technical experts, and really a buy-in from the countries. And this leads to them coming together under the leadership of the president of France and other presidents like Mauritania to organize the One Planet Summit, which really gathered many commitments from donors and led to the setting of the Great Green Wall Accelerator to help coordinate the efforts, to support the implementation of the initiative, but also to enable a more comprehensive mapping and to come up with a framework, a result management framework based on what has been identified so far, and to make sure that civil society and private sector is also part of the game. So these are the strategy based on what has been identified. The accelerator is following up, working at the governance and advocacy level, working with to set up the monitoring and evaluation reporting, and to mobilize resources, following and tracking the pledge made. A lot of money has been made at One Planet Summit, but we have to work to make sure that this will not remain as a pledge. Many pledges sometimes have been done when at the high levels, and then it evaporates. I like using the term evaporate because I'm a water resource person. So that's lead this three stream of work in terms of coming up with a result management framework to fill the gap identified, work at the governance level to see how to build, bring everyone on board. Sometimes the national agencies are just sitting with the national, the Minister of Environment, without the Minister of Finance or others being involved. So these are the government parts, but also seeing how to help the countries develop the bankable project. I was sitting a little bit in the previous session on greening finance, and the question comes, and I was really smiling. Where is the bankable project? Where is the money to develop the bankable project? This is the question we are also trying to answer. So since 2021, and I was saying that this was set without a route map, saying that this is the One Planet Summit, try to make it happen, and a lot have been done with the result management work developed and approved, a coordination with different meeting stakeholders, advocacy in different high levels, financial monitoring, trying to have at least every 6 weeks a meeting with the different donors, at least to update and see their pledges, what are they being implemented, what is the difficulties they are facing, and how to connect them with the countries, and working also to support the countries to come together under a national coalitions. So from 2022, we are continuing to really work and focus on the national coalitions, because it's where they can come together to develop bankable projects, to assess the funding, and also to work on kind of bringing the mix of blending finance, because most of the pledges are loans, and the countries are really kind of hesitant to engage in loans. But when you bring in a private sector, this private sector can be very happy to have a constitutional loan and work with the grant and have a blending finance for these projects. And then work on the setting also on the kind of, I don't want to say lack, but challenges with the governance by working to have an audit for the regional level, the Pan-African Green Wall Agency, but also their relationship with the African Union, their relationship with the countries and with the other stakeholders in play. So that's what we wanted to share, and really available. All this is available online, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Birgui. I am sure I speak for everyone in this room when we wish you the most astonishing success possible. 2030 is less than 8 years from today, and the objectives that have to be reached by then are absolutely breathtaking, and with your help, I'm pretty sure that we have a decent chance of getting there. Now, before I pass the floor to our next and final speaker, I'd like to remind those of you watching online that you can ask questions. There will be a Q&A session afterwards. There is a chat box to the right of your screen. Just type whatever you like in there. For those of you in this room, and indeed the others, can we have the second Slido question, please? And the second Slido question is all about what themes do you focus on? And it's a multiple choice question. You can choose as many themes as you like. Just tap away on your phones while I introduce our next and final speaker. Bernard Khabib has worked for a Belgian embassy, for Belgian development, for the UN, and he's now with the European Union, where he's in charge of projects on environment and biodiversity, and when he's been one of the strongest and most committed supporters of the kind of work that together we're trying to do to regreen the vast areas of Africa's drylands. And Bernard is not having a PowerPoint, as I understand it, but will tell us from his perspective what are the lessons that have been learned, not only from these projects, but also from your decades of experience. Bernard, take it away.
Thank you, Patrick. And as you labeled me as the Father Christmas, I guess I have the privilege to remain seated, indeed, as the Father Christmas in the supermarkets at the end of the year. So no, it's great. I'm very pleased to participate in this panel. I have seen this Regreening Africa project grow, and indeed it's an amazing project that has done amazing things. I would like to mention as well the partners that are not on stage today. We have worked with, in fact, a partnership, and I think it's an important dimension of this project. I should name the key partners, which are GIZ, CARE, represented here, World Vision, Oxfam, Caritas, Sahel Eco, and CRS. They all have played an important role in the implementation of this important project. And indeed, we have achieved a lot through the project, and we want to scale it up in the context of the Great Green Wall Initiative. Turning to the Great Green Wall Initiative, indeed, first, what impresses us about this initiative, it's its scale, obviously. 8,000 kilometers. If you take your point of departure in Brussels, this leads you up to the Chinese border, so the border between Mongolia and China. And this gives you the scale of the ambition of the Great Green Wall. It's a pharaonic project, definitely. The EU is a proud supporter of the initiative since its inception, in fact. Why so? Well, you heard it from our President von der Leyen this morning. Africa is at the heart of our priorities. It will benefit from half of the funding under the Global Gateway Initiative. The region of the Great Green Wall, the Sahel and the Horn of Africa, obviously, I don't need to explain it to you, is a region of strategic importance for us. And we believe that by investing into the sustainable management of land in this region, we invest in development, we invest in food security, we invest in resilience and stability. So all these things are interconnected. We have very much supported the evolution of the conceptual approach of the Great Green Wall from the initial idea of a row of trees that would stop the progress of the desert, an idea that was obviously a bit naive. Looking backwards, it's always easier to say it after time. And so we have very much supported its evolution into what is now a much more nuanced and comprehensive approach that aims to create a mosaic of green and productive landscapes across the Sahel. So we have supported it until now through programs like Regreening Africa, like Action Against Desertification that we have implemented with FAO, and like FLEUV that was implemented with the Secretariat of the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. At the One Planet Summit of last year, our commitment was brought to another scale, to another level, with the commitment of President von der Leyen and so the Commission to provide over 700 million euro per year in support of this initiative, a commitment that is framed by the Great Green Wall Accelerators. So that will cover the 5 pillars of the accelerator that Birgit just presented, meaning that will include investments in sustainable agriculture and food system, in farmers' organization, in private sector development, in sustainable value chains development, in the conservation and restoration of ecosystems, including through our investments in Nature Africa. That is an initiative aiming at building, well, helping our partners in Africa to build a network of protected area throughout Africa, including investments, and that's important as well, that's an important pillar of the initiative, in sustainable energy and climate resilient infrastructure, including investments in governance and capacities. I will mention 5 key aspects of our approach to the Great Green Wall, and very much that we learned from our experience in various parts of the world, but in particular under the Regreening Africa project and the other projects I have mentioned here. The first one is the subsidiarity. We believe that land management, of course, is best done at the level of the land user, at the ground level, and that's why the bulk of our support to the Great Green Wall will not be done through macro, regional, top-down programs, but very much in the context of our regular country programs, and strongly embedded into our regular partnership with partner countries. This in the context of our partnership with the 11 countries that are parties to the Pan-African Agency, but also in partnership with 7 other countries that are part of the same region and that have, in the past and looking forward, are willing to implement Great Green Wall related initiatives. And these country programs will be supported and complemented by a lighter regional program. The second aspect of our approach is that we don't believe, as I said, in top-down solutions. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to the problem of this very diverse area of the world. We need definitely to adapt and to build on the local realities, on the local dynamics, on the local institutions to intervene and try as much as possible to respond to local aspirations. The third aspect is this mosaic of interventions that I mentioned earlier. So we aim through the EU support to contribute to the Great Green Wall mosaic. And as explained this morning by President von der Leyen, who mentioned emphatically the Great Green Wall as part of our opening speech, the EU is definitely willing to add a number of bricks to this wall, or a number of, how do you call it, tiles to this mosaic. We believe indeed that these interventions are multidimensional and need to be factoring in the local realities. It's not only a question, it's very important, not only a question of techniques and technological solutions, as explained by Mieke and by Birgit. It's also a question of developing models that are financially viable for the land users that implement them. Unless we find these models that bring direct benefits to the land user, we will not get land user adopt these successful practices at scale. Another aspect that has been highlighted, it's not sufficient to work on technical solutions, we'll need to work as well on governance systems. If you look at the big successes under the Great Green Wall initiative, like Ethiopia, like Niger, and like other parts of the world, there is always an important governance dimension with robust policies at national level, sustained political commitment, and local governance systems as well that help to improve the management of the land, including these social exclosures that Patrick has mentioned. A fourth dimension of our partnership, and I'm looking at Patrick to see if I still have a bit of time, but a fourth dimension, I'm a bit lost with the main clock, I have to say, of our partnership is that we will work with the diversity of our strategic partners in these countries. And I think that's an important point. It's a question, I think, a condition for success of the Great Green Wall to bring the Great Green Wall out of the walls of the Great Green Wall agencies. It's essential. The Great Green Wall is a vision. It will succeed if we can manage to rally a broad range of stakeholders behind this vision and get them to act. And so it's very important to bring this initiative out of the walls of the environment ministries and to bring it to the mainstream ministries that are responsible for land use, of course starting with the ministries of agriculture, the ministries of energy, the ministries of forestry, the ones responsible for land use, local governments as well, of course, and beyond governments. I think you mentioned your outreach to civil society organizations and producers organizations that obviously at the end of the day are the ones that manage the land. And finally, I think this has been emphasized as well, we don't want to reinvent cold water. There is a lot of experience around. There have been many failures in land management, but also large-scale successes. We want to learn from these, and that's why our regional program that we are preparing together with Birgit's team and Mieke and Patrick's team will have a strong knowledge component. It's very important that any intervention under the Great Green Wall is strongly rooted in robust knowledge and in data, as explained. Charles Michel this morning said in his intervention that we need to develop a culture de l'évaluation, an evaluation culture. I think that's something we want to support as well, so to support the impact monitoring system of the Great Green Wall. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Patrick. Back to you.
Thank you, Bernard. Can we have the results of the second Slido up on the screen, please? And remind to everyone that you can ask your questions through the chat. And those of you privileged to be here in real life, please just stand up if you'd like to ask a question. We'll get a microphone over to you. But first, the Slido results, please. Yes, so which sector do you represent? Well, a lot of us are public sector and civil society. Interestingly enough, we have almost a fifth of the people who come here from the private sector. Personally, I find that encouraging because in the end, those of us who generate the knowledge need people with an entrepreneurial streak to make it happen. Can we have the result to the second Slido, please? The second question. Which themes do you focus on? Well, surprise, surprise, this is a session on environment and biodiversity, and most people are interested in environment and biodiversity. But interestingly enough, almost 2/3 are interested in agriculture, and almost half are interested in research and education. And that, of course, is crucial, because research and development is what we have shown and discussed in this meeting, absolutely crucial to move things forward. Can we now have the third Slido question on screen, please? That people can begin to answer while we take the first question from the floor. Mr. Malone, what a pleasure to see you after all these years and after COVID. You look well. Over to you.
Thank you very much. It's Phil Malone from Access Agriculture. Thank you so much for having the green agenda here. It is so important that what you said is made a reality. When we have things in local languages, local people take ownership. Farmers can learn from farmers. Communities can learn from communities. Believe it or not, in many countries in Africa, just as in many countries in the West, the people in rural areas don't believe their governments. But if they see other farmers, they know there are things that they can do, and they take pride in being part of this great movement. So can we please see what you've said put into practice at local level so local people can take ownership? Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. It is, of course, the most important question in this business, how you can get hundreds of millions of householders to copy the best practices in their own context. Who'd like to pick up on that? Meanwhile, the next person who would like to ask a question, Merlin. So I'll take one more question from Merlin and then I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Patrick. My name is Merlijn van Waas. I'm the head of sustainable development at CARE Nederland. Of course, we have worked with you over these past years, and I just wanted to state that the research in development approach has been very useful for CARE in our work with women and communities to build sustainable livelihoods, value chains through land restoration efforts. Now, listening this afternoon to the presentations, I have two linked questions. So in the beginning there was a comment about the cost of hectares restored. So my question is, so in your assessment, what is the return on investment that can be achieved through these land restoration efforts when combined with research and development, and we systematically scale that across rural development. And secondly, I heard a lot of promising commitments with respect to this type of work. What can be done to integrate research and development and indeed multi-stakeholder processes across this region? Over.
Thank you, Merlin. Anyone else? Online questions? That's coming from you, isn't it? You have another one. Now, I'm just looking at the time. I believe I'm being stopped in 2 minutes and 53 seconds, right? I have 5 extra minutes? Marvelous. 4 extra minutes, thank you. I'll take it 4.5. All right, good.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Pieter Zoutswelle, and I work with CARE Netherlands also in various programs. I have a question. For more than 30 years, we are engaged in this type of support, and mostly the funds come from the public sector. To scale up, wouldn't it be great if we could get a better link with the private sector? And I wonder how that can be done. We often talk about the need for scaling up, and we have so many good approaches that have worked already, but are kind of not up to the scale that we would like to see.
So 2 questions about scaling up, really. Who'd like to take it away? And in the middle of that, a question on how to effectively integrate research and development in planning and in commitments. Birgit?
Yeah, I can take the first one and then the last one, and then you complete. I would like to comment on the farmers learning from farmers. I think that I strongly myself believe on that, and I think it's why we are really working with to have a stakeholders mapping. We did a study to really map the stakeholders, but not only that, it's really to go into the communities, having some small videos, and now you know that even in a very rural, far-fetching village in Africa, they have phones, they have mobile phones, and they can watch videos, even if they cannot, for example, have internet or a computer or email. And we are doing some videos with the farmers and sharing it from, for example, Senegal to Djibouti and the experience. Due to the time, I want to be extending on that, but the question on how to get a better link with the private sector, we just concluded a study on non-stakeholders mapping to find out what is in the area and the countries and at the regional level, to really get to know them and link them to the project. How do you get to private to be interested is to show them the value of value chain, for example. What are they gaining in supporting restoration? What is the business they can gain from it in terms of baobab instead of moringa, instead of local species, and what is the market, what is the job creation they can do. And we are also launching, I think Patrick can maybe even explore on that with the World Economic Forum on how to bring the private sector and the value chain into the planning. So that's how we try to link so that they have the say.
Thank you. Thank you, Birgit. Before I pass the floor, can I ask the technical people to put the third slide or question up so you can begin to answer that one? Bernard?
Yes, thank you. Just, well, Birgit, I think, has really provided the main elements. If I may add a few things. Well, on private sector investment, I think first we should not underestimate the challenge. We are talking about investing into degraded lands, into arid regions, and to some regions that are affected by political and security instability. So, yes, we see a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, not underestimating the challenges. About the private sector, it's very important that we always recall that the private sector is first and foremost the farmer and the farmer's organization. It's not the large-scale private sector that is not very much present in this region. And it's also the SMEs that are down the chain, in the value chain, so that are doing the processing and the marketing. And we believe it's very important to invest in these, because when you have an access to the market and value addition, you have a pull factor that incentivizes you to invest into your crops. And then indeed in terms, and that these incentives is a key to large-scale adoption by the farmers. I would mention a second one, obviously, without expanding on that. It's providing secure land tenure, which is, of course, a key condition to have long-term investments in land.
Okay, so just to wrap up on the research and development, I think one of the really key parts is around these partnerships and intentional engagement, intentional structured engagement where scientists, governments, NGOs, and all of these partners are interacting. By bringing scientists to present to these people, they bring it into a language that can be interpreted. We can have a dialogue around what is being presented, and that can be brought into the programming, into the incentive structures, and into the government policy. And I think there are partnerships and platforms that are working on this, and I think more investment and more intentional engagement is what's needed. In terms of return on investment, I hope within the next 6 months we have some really concrete figures from Regreening Africa. We'll be able to project into the future on incomes and livelihoods from some of the restoration processes. We know what has been spent on the implementation, and we hoped that that information will be brought forward to also give a lot of faith in that it doesn't take as much as we imagine to start the process of restoration.
Wonderful. Thank you, all three of you. What's particularly interesting here is that the issues that you mentioned in your summary, Bernard, are broadly shared by the audience. You talked about subsidiarity, you talked about governance, you talked about technical assistance. The multidimensionality of the mosaic is something you talked about. Diversity of strategic issues, using lessons learned. In one way or another, all this is coming back. And that fills me with hope, because what we've heard today is not something radically new. We all knew sooner or later that we are more likely to restore Sahelian landscapes when we work together with Sahelian people than when we get Cargill to invest $10 million in a 10,000 hectare plantation of some sort. We all know that this means that we need to give power to local people to manage their own natural resources, manage their own affairs. We all know that this means giving them the tools to benefit from that management by teaching them about business, by helping to develop value chains, by helping them increase the biodiversity in their landscapes, perhaps even back to the stage where these landscapes will attract tourists willing to pay to watch wild animals. So we have some idea today of where we need to go with all of this, and it always goes through one thing. It goes through a farmer that has to decide today to do intervention X, because intervention X is more likely to put food on the table tomorrow than intervention Y. And our job, the job of all of us, is to ensure that the farmer is able to wisely choose between intervention X and intervention Y. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. Please join me in giving a warm thanks to this marvelous cast of speakers. And I look forward to seeing you all again at EDD 2030, when we will be celebrating the successes of the Great Wall.
Absolutely, thanks a lot for that, Patrick. That does wrap up our sessions on sustainable and resilient agriculture and regreening Africa and the Great Green Wall. I must admit, Patrick, I am in awe, because we've talked already a lot about partnerships during this morning's session. I think here we've seen the sheer leverage of joining forces at full strength, so that we talked about 500,000 hectares of land that has been restored. I think that sends a very strong ray of hope that resonates throughout this entire room. We're going to take a half-an-hour break now, and then after that we're going to change gears, because we have 3 more sessions lined up for you that relate to quality education. So I, for one, am looking forward to those, and looking forward to welcoming you here again or on our platform at 4 o'clock sharp.